Going to do a little practice on area, finding the area and the circumference of a circle. So if you notice up top, I already wrote down both of my formulas. So you want to make sure you're using your formula charts. That way you can always remember and utilize this whenever you're doing problems like this. So up top in the greenish color, it says circumference, and there's two different formulas that we can use. Circumference is equal to pi times diameter, or circumference is equal to 2 pi times the radius. And remember, this symbol indicates pi. And what we use for pi is 3.14. So that's the approximation of pi. Pi is equal to 3.14. All right, and then for area, our formula to find the area of a circle is area is equal to pi r squared. Now, remember, when you're squaring a number, that means you're multiplying the number by itself. That's why I showed a different way you can look at it. All right, I wrote down area is equal to pi times radius, because you're going to multiply that radius times itself. All right, so now we have three practice problems that we're going to go ahead and look at, starting with number one. So number one, they gave us a circle. First thing we want to do is identify what information we have from the circle. All right, there's a line that goes from one end of the circle to the other end of the circle, and it crosses our center. So that means that that's the diameter. So our diameter here is 8 feet. All right, the next thing that we could do is figure out what our radius is. Always remember the relationship between the diameter and the radius. The diameter is twice the radius, so that means the radius is half of the diameter. All right, so half of 8 would be 4. So now we know our radius is 4 feet. Since we know our radius, we can find our area and we can find our circumference. Let's go ahead and find our area first. Remember, the formula for area is equal to pi times radius squared. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in the information I know. I don't know what the area is. I know we're going to use 3.14 to represent pi. All right, and my radius is 4 feet, or 4. And I'm going to square that amount, meaning I'm going to multiply 4 times itself. So it's really going to be 4 times 4. So now I'm left with area is equal to 3.14 times 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is going to get me 16. And now I'm going to need to multiply 16 times pi, which we're using 3.14 to represent. All right, so I'm going to go and multiply these two values. 4 times 6 is going to give me 24. Carry my 2, 8, 18, 4, it's 1, 3. All right, so now I see that my area is going to equal 50 and 24 hundredths feet squared. Remember, since it's area, we're going to square our value. All right, so I used a lot of room on that. Now I got to create some space. And now I'm going to find our circumference. So with the circumference, they gave us a diameter. I'd rather use the diameter. And I'm going to write down our formula, which is circumference is equal to pi d. We could use either formula. All right, if I wanted to use a radius, then I'll write down circumference is equal to 2 pi r, but I want to use the diameter. Now I'm going to fill it in with the information I know. I don't know the circumference yet. I know we're going to use 3.14 to represent pi, and then my diameter is 8 feet. All right, so now all that's left for me to do is multiply 3.14 times 8. All right, so now I know that my circumference is going to be 25 and 12 hundredths feet. And since that's circumference, we don't have to square it. All right, moving on to number 2. All right, maybe I'll find some space right down here. So number 2, we're going to go ahead and fill in the information that we know. All right, we know that our radius is going to be 7 inches because the radius is any line that goes from the center to one end of the circle. All right, now we're going to identify our diameter. Remember the relationship between the radius and the diameter. My radius is half the diameter. So if I want to know what the diameter is, I'm just going to multiply 7 times 2, which gets me 14. So my diameter is 14 inches. All right, now we're going to find our area. So I'm going to write down my formula, which is area is equal to pi r squared. All right, I know I don't know the area yet. I'm going to use 3.14 to represent pi, and my radius is 7 inches. All right, I'm going to multiply, 7 squared means I'm going to multiply 7 times 7, and then I'm going to multiply uh, the product of that times 3.14. So let's go ahead and let's knock that out. So 7 times 7 is going to give me 49. And then I'm going to multiply 3.14 times 49. All right. So we're going to go ahead and fast track that. 3.14 times 49 is going to give me an area of 153 and 86 hundredths. And since it's the area, we're going to square our units. So it's going to be inches squared. All right, moving on to finding the circumference. All right, so for the circumference, again, I like using the diameter better. So I'm going to write down circumference is equal to pi d. All right, I know I don't know the circumference yet. I know we're going to use 3.14 to represent pi. And then my diameter is 14 inches. So all I'm going to do here is multiply 3.14 times 14. All right, and when I multiply 3.14 times 14, I end up with a product of 43 and 96 hundredths. So I'm going to write down 43 and 96 hundredths inches. And since it's circumference, we don't have to square it. All right, moving on to the last one here. All right, the last one, we're trying to find our radius first. Notice they gave us our diameter on the circle because it goes from one end of the circle to the other and it crosses through the center. So 9 represents our diameter. I think it's supposed to be yards. All right, my radius is going to be half the diameter. Half of 9 is going to be 4.5. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and find our area. So I'm going to write down my formula. Area is equal to pi r squared. Now I'm going to fill in information I know. I know pi is represented by 3.14. My radius is going to be 4.5, and I'm squaring it. All right, so now its area is equal to 3.14. And then since we're squaring 4.5, that means we're multiplying 4.5 times itself. All right, so 4.5 times 4.5 is going to get us 20 and 25 hundredths. And we're going to multiply that times 3.14. All right, and that's going to get us an area of 63 and 585 thousandths. And since we found the area, we have to square our units. So 63 and 585 thousandths yards squared. All right, so last one, we're going to go ahead and find the circumference. All right, so I like using the formula that has a diameter in it. So I'm going to write down circumference is equal to pi times the diameter. We don't know the circumference. We know that we're going to use 3.14 to represent pi, and our diameter is 9 yards. So all I got to do is multiply 3.14 times 9. All right, and 3.14 times 9 is going to give me 28 and 26 hundredths yards. All right, so that's all there is to it for our practice. Just remember kind of the structural differences or what area and circumference are. So circumference, we're just talking about the distance around something. All right. So if you got like a piece of yarn and you put it on top of a can of soup and you just measured how far along that yarn, how much yarn you needed to get around that can of soup, that's the circumference. All right, but say you opened up that can of soup and you stuffed it with something. All right, that's the area. All right, so I mean, or you covered, I'm sorry, if you covered the top of that can of soup, so you painted the top of the can of soup, that represents the area. All right, so the distance around it is the circumference, covering it is the area. All right.